What's up, booktube? It's Leah Cooper, and today I am bringing you a book review. I know, it's been a while. So this is going to be a standalone book review for The House of Styx by Derek Kunstin. Editing Leah here to interrupt and correct my pronunciation of this author's last name. It's Derek Kunstin. Literally, for more than a year, I have been reading it with a T and not a K. And I have no explanation for why my eyes have been reading it that way. I received a copy of this book from the publisher in exchange for an honest review. All of my thoughts and opinions are going to be 100% my own. And yeah, let's get started. So this is a sci-fi novel, and all I knew going into it was that it was a story about colonists on Venus, and that was honestly enough to catch my interest. I have never read anything by Derek Kunstin before. He is more well known, I think, for being the author of The Quantum Magician and that trilogy. I have almost picked up The Quantum Magician a couple of times, and I've never done it just because based on the subgenre, I assume it's the books are probably pretty chunky, and I just never quite had the time to dedicate to a new chunky SF series because I have so many other things to read. But I really like the sound of Venus colony stories, because I think in sci-fi, I do love me a colony story, right? Like a settling, like a colonist story. But I think in sci-fi, what we get a lot of times is solar system colonist stories is Mars or the moon. And we don't get many that are set on Venus. And so that was just really, really cool, unique angle, right? I later found out, I listened to the first part of a interview Kunstin did where he talked about the House of Styx, and then in that interview I found out that this is actually a prequel to the Quantum Magician trilogy. That being said, you definitely don't need to read that trilogy, and in fact, it might be good to read the House of Styx first. I think there's going to be a sequel to the House of Styx. I feel like I saw somewhere that it's going to be a duology, but there's no book listed on Goodreads, so maybe I made that up. But I do think it is a very good place to start with this author's work. You can tell by the title of this video, I did give this book a solid 4 stars. I really liked it, and yeah, we're gonna talk about all those things that I really did like. So like I said, it is a Venus colony story. It's very much like a family drama. It is multi-POV following several members of the Diaquilon family as they kind of struggle with their place in the colony and their future and creating a future for themselves. So right off the bat, something I didn't know going into this book is that it's about a colony of Quebecois French Canadians, which again is not a nationality I see a whole lot represented in speculative fiction, so that was just kind of random and cool. And Kunstin definitely brings in a lot of Quebecois slang and language into this title. And basically, Venus is a really, really, really hard place to colonize, and the Quebecois have done so at extreme cost, that they've incurred a lot of debt with the banks. And this is a future where basically banks have so much power, they're kind of like nations unto themselves. And the colony on Venus is still relatively small. The surface obviously is too hot to do anything with, so the colonists all live in floating sail habitats, and they cultivate a native, it's a cross between a plant, it's a plant. They call them trawlers, and they're these huge plant structures that float and drift along in Venus's atmosphere. They have lots of tendrils that they use to break down the minerals in the atmosphere, the chemicals in the atmosphere, to create electricity and oxygen and all that sort of stuff. And they cultivate these trawlers. They have trawler herds. That's why I was kind of it's kind of like a plant, kind of like an animal, but it's really a plant. They've also been growing them and bioengineering them so that they can live on the trawlers. And you have different levels where people live in the atmosphere. And so at the highest level, you've got like the colony government, the biggest habitats, the bank representatives, all that sort of stuff, and they float around, orbiting, not orbiting, but going around through the planet together at a very, very high altitude. And then you have these, I'm going to butcher all the French because I can't speak French. You have the coureurs, who are like smaller families living in much smaller habitats, who go much, much deeper to try to get minerals, oxygen, water, electricity out of the lower depths. And so there's definitely like kind of an almost aquatic feel to this, because you've got all these layers, levels where people are living and doing work and going up and down in them and like flying between them. It's not aquatic, it's still in the air, but I don't know, like there's just so many like really cool facets to like this universe Constance created and the world building. It's just like such a fun, cool place to like learn about and like experience. At least for me as a reader, like this is definitely the sort of thing that appeals to me. This is definitely the sort of like world building that I really, really love. So anyways, you're following the Diacolon family, and I feel like I need to kind of comment on something I didn't realize going into this book, and that was the range of diversity in it. So I've already mentioned that all of the characters are French Canadian. It's not like a group I see a lot in books, but more than that, you have one of the primary POVs, and I would say the primary POV is a young trans woman. She is a teenager, and in a little way this is a coming of age story for that character in particular, like wrestling with her trans identity and it developing over the course of the book. So you've got that. You have another sibling in the Diacolon family who has Down syndrome, and you have another Diacolon sibling who is a POV character who is queer. So you've got like all this like diversity happening in the story, and the subject of disability is like a very core element to the story, because basically the sibling with Down syndrome is the eldest sibling, and they were born on Venus. And before they were born, the colony is a bit of a socialist or communist colony where people are allotted a portion of like medicine, food, materials, repair parts, etc., and everyone gets their share and everyone has to contribute, etc., because they're such a small colony. And before the sibling with Down syndrome, their name is Ginud. Before he was born, the colony told his mother that she had to abort him because he wasn't going to be a productive member of the colony, and so he was not going to be recognized by the colony. And his parents said, well, fuck that. Like, no, we're not giving up our kid. And so they had Janud and all the rest of their children. They never received any a portion of anything for Janud. So like no food, no medicine, no materials, nothing. The colony operated as though he didn't exist at all. And this created a rift with the Diacolons and the colony, for obvious reasons. And it came to the point where their father decided to take the family off the main habitat and go into the depths on what is known as courier ships, right? So those are the littler, poorer family ships that work at very deep depths. And they're kind of they operate a lot of times on like the edge of legality with the colony. And this is a central theme throughout the book. And it shapes a lot of the siblings' experiences and their relationships with one another. This breach with, what their parents felt was right, and how the colony treated their family and treated their brother. So you've got all that stuff happening, but what it comes down to is that they're working at the lower depths. The father and Pascal are kind of primary POV character, though not the only POV character. Eventually go investigate a strange climate disturbance on the surface of Venus, and they discover something that could radically change the course of their family and the colony, and this sets in motion a series of schemes within the Diaquilon family to try to seize the future for themselves, basically. And it's so action packed, and I really loved the characters. So there's three primary Diaquilon POVs. You've got Pascal, who's the youngest sibling, Emile, and Marta. And Emile is kind of like the black sheep of the family. Marta is like the kind of the strong leaderly one in the family. She very much takes after their father and is kind of their father's right-hand man. And she's also like the politician of the family. And then Pascal, like I said, is the youngest, is kind of realizing that they're trans and discovering what that means for them, and how do they, like, you know, tell their family about that kind of stuff. And they're also the engineer. And I really love them. I especially loved Marta. I thought she was just amazingly interesting and such a good, like, people person. Like, she's so good at, like, reading people and figuring out how to get people what they want and, like, bring people together. It was so super interesting. And I liked Emile the least. I like his character definitely went in a direction in the course of the book that I wasn't expecting, though I do think he's like the most irritating part of the book. I don't want to go into it too much, but he's kind of like one of those artists who spends a lot of time drinking and thinking big thoughts about art, and you just kind of want to slap him. But anyway, I like I said, I think the world building in this is so good, and the family is so good, and like the seismic phenomenon they find on Venus is so interesting, which is why I'm hoping that I didn't have a fever dream and that there is actually a second book coming out. Like, I really want there to be another book so that we can, like, explore more. And it makes me really curious, since this is the prequel to the Quantum Magician. I am now 100 times more determined to, like, get my hands on a copy of that book, because, like, the threads that were developed in this story are so interesting and so unique. I really, really, really want to see where Kunsten took that idea, because I know the Quantum Magician is set in the same universe, but, like, at least 100, but I want to say a couple hundred years after the point in time that this book takes place. So I want to see what is extrapolated from the threads that were started in this book, if that makes sense. So yeah, I think that this book is very interesting and just a really fun read. And like I have mentioned, very action-packed. There's just, like, a lot of stuff happening, a lot of moving parts, and a lot of people having issues and struggling with themselves and struggling against the environment and struggling against politics. And this book is just doing a lot. And I found it very fast-paced to read, even though it's like a 500-page book. I do believe that as of posting this review, the ebook has already been released. I think the ebook came out in August of 2020, but the hardcover has not. And so I think that they sent these ARCs out in anticipation of the hardcover release. So I will leave a link down to somewhere where you can pick this up, because I'm, like, positive you can buy this at least in ebook form from Amazon, but if it's available to buy on the publisher's website, I'll leave a link to that below. If you're interested in picking up a copy, I do highly recommend it if you are interested at all in, like, frontier colony planet type stories, like that subgenre of science fiction. I do think that this is a fun entry, and it made me really excited to read, like, more in this universe. The only real criticisms I have of it are that, like I said, I really didn't like Emile as a POV. I think he works, especially in, like, the last quarter of the book, and I can see why he's there, like, thematically, you know, but he wasn't always the most pleasant to read. The other thing that I didn't like, and which kept this from being a 5-star, is a spoiler, like, massive spoiler, and I don't want to say it. Basically, like, something happens at the end, but, like, the confirmation of it didn't happen on screen like we see all the things leading up to that eventuality happening, but we don't see it happen. We're just told later, slightly later, that it did happen. And so since we didn't see it, there's a part of me that doesn't believe it's true. I want to believe that there was a different outcome, that something else is going on. And so that niggles at me. I don't want to say any more. If you've read it, you probably know what I'm talking about. And again, that's another reason why I really, really, really want there to be another book, because I want like that niggling sensation to be correct. But those are kind of like my only big criticisms of it. As for the representation, as far as I know, Derek Kunstin is not himself trans, nor does he have Down syndrome. So it's like not own voices. Like that representation is not own voices. And I can't speak to how good the disability rep is, because I don't know anyone who has Down syndrome personally. I don't know a whole lot about it. It seemed like fairly positive representation in my opinion, but I can't speak to that, you know? And I just like, I can't really speak to the trans rep. I think there are some cliches with how the trans rep is done, but ultimately it is positively portrayed in my opinion. But again, I think you should definitely look for like Own Voices reviews regarding the representation, because I can't speak to it personally. I think that's all I have to say about the House of Styx. 2 thumbs up from me, and I want to read more in this universe. Like I really, really, really want there to be a sequel. Look down below for links to this book if you are interested in picking it up. Let me know if this sounds like something you'd like to read, or if you have read it already, what did you think? And I'll see you guys in the next video. Who knows what that'll be? I genuinely don't. 1 month left of school. 1 month. I just have to survive like 1 more month. I can do it. That's what I'm telling myself. This summer is going to be the reading summer though. Like I am going to take the time this summer to read all of the books that I have not had time to read. Including, I do have another arc from Rebellion. It's an epic fantasy book, and I really, really, really want to read it, but it's over 500 pages, so it's going to take me a while because school. Like, I'm so ready for school to be done. So I can read these books, these chunky books that I'm, trying to read more of. Anyways, thanks for watching. I'll see you guys later.